Okay, so in today's video, I have a partially unboxed unboxing. The reason why I say that is when my package arrived, it was heavily distorted, so I've already opened it up to be sure that the pin was not damaged. But as you can see, this box had a rough time coming from China. It was the box inside this sleeve wrapped in the plastic wrap, and then it was shipped in just this thin envelope. So it had an interesting start. All that being said, today I have the Wingsung 930. Now, this is my first Wingsung, or it's also called the Junlai, depending on where you see it listed. It's, I guess that's a line made by Wingsung, but the reason why I got this is I thought it was interesting in that it's so comically large. And to start, let's just show some scale here. That's a Lamy 2000. This is a Kaweco Sport. This is one of my largest pins currently, the Opus 88 Demonstrator, and then also a Pelikan M805. So when you look at these side by side, it's very obvious, just in closed setting, that is a large pin. But it goes different because when you uncap it, this is actually a number 9 nib. Now, my Kaweco, it's probably one of the smaller nibs that I have. I mean, when you look at that kind of comparison there, it's kind of crazy. This nib is massive. So that's one reason why I got it. I was just curious. It looked so interesting. So let me finish showing these size comparisons, and then I'll kind of go through this a little bit more, and we'll get it inked up. But it's a large nib, and I just found that humorous to a point that it dwarfs every other nib I have. Now, I don't have any number 8 nibs, but, that's an M800 nib there, which is a pretty large nib. It's not as big as the M1000 or as like a Mont Blanc 149, but look at the size comparison. That is still a massive difference in size. Now, this Wingsung or Junlai is in fine. They didn't come in an extra fine. Get this capped here so it doesn't roll. So just to kind of show, if I line up, and the Lamy 2000 is not the best for lining up nib sizes because it's a hooded nib. It was more for the body length since it's kind of a common pin. So if we get all of those lined up, that really shows, the disparity in the nib sizes. I think you could almost fit 2 of these Kaweco Sport nibs lengthwise to one of the Junlai. So, I thought it was interesting. It'll be interesting to try and play around with. And this is also a piston filler. So it'll be, it's my first Wingsung. So starting with a piston, or, the only other Chinese pins I have are the Asvines, and they've actually been really surprisingly great, all the ones that I've used. So I'll be interested to get this filled up and do some riding with it. But before I do that, I saw this on a different video. This nib unit actually will unscrew. So I'm kind of curious of talking, seeing if I can get another nib unit, and then maybe get a maker to create a pocket pin with a massive nib, because that would also be quite humorous. But it just threads in, basic piston. It does have an ink window that you can see there. Before we fill it up, you can see the line, so it'll show you the ink level. And I believe in another video, this holds, from what I saw, 2.5 or so milliliter, so decent capacity. But, basic piston, get that opened up. And the ink I'm going to put in it is something that'll be bright and common. And then one thing to take into account is the breather hole in this is not this little opening on the front. You have to get the nib all the way in. So you're going to either need an ink miser or a pretty deep bottle in order to fill this. So that's one reason why I'm going with this Lamy bottle, since they have the little indentation in the bottom to allow you to put the nib all the way in. So get this massive nib wiped off here. And, I don't know how fine this is going to be. With it being a larger nib, though, it's probably going to have a little bit of spring, even though it's a steel nib, but it's gold, dual tone look, but it is still steel. And so I'm very interested. I have obviously not written with this yet. This was waiting for me when I came home from vacation, because that is one thing. This actually shipped faster than I thought. I ordered it on like April 9th, and I think it got here on the 16th. So I was actually on my vacation and was expecting, that'll easily come a lot later. But it was waiting for me when I got home on my front porch. So this pin will post, but I mean, I don't have the largest hands, but look at that. That is massive. So I'm going to write with this not posted. And for its size, it's actually not very heavy. It's a pretty light pen in that I think, it's probably about similar to the Opus 88. And I've written that's about 3/4 full. But, so let's see how this does here. So it has a little bit of feedback, and I probably should have looked at this first. The feed's slightly out of center. See if I can get that over without making it too big of a mess on everything. But it's got, a little bit of flex to it. You can see a little bit of variation coming through there when doing some, lines like that. But it writes pretty nice. It's surprising how nice it writes for such a large nib. Now, this does put your hand quite a distance away from the paper, so depending on how you hold your pen, that might be a non-starter for you. It's not uncomfortable for me, but I wouldn't see using this for a long writing session, because even in just doing this for testing, that just feels it's further away. I'm used to having about a quarter of that distance to the paper, so it just feels a little awkward just from the I'm further away. But so the nib, it seems to be tuned pretty nicely for coming out of the box, and the fact that it came shipped from China in a damaged box and the pin seems to have no ill effects, that's also a pretty good sign that it's going to have some durability. Now, how long of a durability, that's yet to be seen. But, it's just I mainly got it because it's funny. I love comically large things, and this pen is not a daily use because, one thing to account for with a pen like this is it's not going to fit in most of your pen cases. So here's my Rickshaw Sinclair, which is one of my bigger cases. And if I put that in one of the sleeves, it kind of stretches out the thing, so it'll just fit in there. Now, I don't think, let me see if it'll fit in my Lamy case, or my Lockbee case here. So it will fit in a Sinclair, but it sticks out a good 1/2 inch out of the end of the Lockbee case. So there's no way you'd be able to zip that. So the only way you could really do it with this case is they do have this little kind of sleeve on the outside, is you could just kind of tuck it in there. And then this is also not going to fit in really any pen loop that I can think of, just due to the diameter, because that's another thing in terms of diameter. My Opus 88 demo does not fit in many pen loops. And actually, I guess let's do this side, not the caps. You can see it's a larger diameter overall in the body than the Opus 88 Demonstrator. So very large pen, but decent writer out of the box. Piston filler. So I'm going to try and use this some. Like I said, I'm not certain I'm going to be able to use it for really long riding sessions, but I plan to leave it on the top of the desk and reach for it first for the next few days just to put it through some more testing. But overall, I'm impressed. It's, I think, shipped to my house. I ordered this through a store on AliExpress. I don't recall the name, but I'll put a link in the description. I think it was like $45 for a piston filling pen with a incredibly large steel nib. So, not terribly expensive, and it's just, interesting to write with it. It's, if you go to a normal pen and then come back to this, it would be like, because this is a good comparison too from sizes, diameter wise, it's quite crazy to see that size disparity. And it's almost like the cap is the length of the Kaweco Sport. So that just kind of also helps illustrate the size. So, I look forward to using it some. If I run into any issues, I'll make a follow-up. But overall, the Junlai or Wingsung 930 is a massively large pen that I look forward to putting to some use. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that unboxing, damaged unboxing of this Wingsung 930 pen. This has been a great first impression. It's my first Wingsung, and there's some other models that they make that I might have to look into getting into now because I'm very impressed by seeing this one out of the box and how it writes and how it performs. And it's got decent build quality as well, so I might have to look at picking up a couple more of these. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you can see new videos like this as they're released, and thanks for watching.